presume that
yes,
you can.
we can.
Okay, thank you. So, because we're in Belgium, I should say bonjour tout le monde, goedemorgen allemaal, and good morning. First of all, I apologize. I have been sick, so if my voice goes off a little bit, please bear with me. So I'm here today to talk to you about the next call, the 2020-2022 Postdoctoral Fellowship call. So what are the postdoctoral fellowships? What are their objectives? The main objective is to obviously foster excellence through the implementation of research projects. But with these projects, what we also aim to do is to enhance the creative and innovative potential of researchers holding a PhD. And we want really for you to, develop skills, transferable skills, everything that would be necessary or that you would benefit in your career development. There is a focus on I3, international, intersectoral, and interdisciplinary, and mobility. And since last year, we have developed further bridges and exposures with the non-academic sector. I will explain that a little bit more in detail in the coming slides. What do we cover in terms of topics? Well, we cover absolutely every single research topic. We in-house divide the topics into 8 different panels. Once you will apply for your fellowship, you will see that you will have to fit in one of those panels. And these are chemistry, economics, society, life, physics, engineering, mathematics, and environment. So you will have to pick exactly where your research fits. Just as a reminder, in this case, we're talking about mono-beneficiary action to support postdoctoral researchers and careers. And we have, oh, I'm really sorry. We have 2 types of fellowships, the European ones and the global postdoctoral fellowship. The European one is anybody in the world coming to Europe, and the global postdoctoral fellowship includes a stay outside of an EU member state or an associated country to Horizon Europe. So let's start with the participating organization. Who can participate in the postdoctoral fellowship? Any legal entity in an EU member state or Horizon Europe associated country. I will stop very briefly here because I've received already questions in advance. Switzerland is not an EU Horizon Europe associated country. It is what we call a third country. And for the time being, as of today, the UK is still a Horizon Europe associated country. We can discuss it further along, but I would like already to make this distinction here. What nationality of researchers can apply? Well, basically any nationality. However, for global fellowship, you have to be a national or a long-term resident of a member state or a Horizon Europe associated country. You have to have, so the rules for the researchers, a PhD at the call deadline. What do we mean by that? Is on the 14th of September, if I'm not mistaken, you have to have defended your PhD. I know in some cases you defend your PhD in one day and you get the award later, but it's really the date that you defend your PhD when you have these 2 possibilities. You have to have up to 8 years research experience after your PhDs. But we have exceptions. There's a tool that will be available to you on our website to be able to calculate these exceptions, such as career breaks, once you've worked outside research, maternity leave, paternity leave, all these leaves, etc., can count outside of these years of research. The mobility rule, you're not allowed to have resided or had any activity in the country of the beneficiary for a period of 12 months over the course of 36 months. It's not 12 consecutive months. We calculate the different periods day by day. You will see in your application, you have to be extremely precise into the dates that you move into a country, that you leave the country. We ask for the exact specific date. There's a little star here because, as you know, we also deal with Euratom topics. And in terms of the eligibility for the organization and researchers, we also include organization based in a Euratom associated country and also the nationals or long-term resident of the Euratom associated country if your research topic falls into this priority. So what are the conditions? The European fellowships can last between 12 and 24 months, and the global fellowship 24 to 36 months, because you have a 12 to 24 month outgoing phase where you go outside of Europe and a 12-month mandatory return phase in Europe. I will already also answer a question that I've received here. Does it make any difference in terms of the success rate if I apply for a 12 or 24 month? No, it doesn't. What matters is really what you're going to do during that period. In general, we tend to see a lot more 24-month research proposal. That's because research takes time to set up, etc. And I think most researchers would like to use, and I'm talking about European fellowship, would like to use the maximum amount of time, that is 24 months. But you will not have a lower success rate or a lower rating because you decide to do a 12-month project. You have the opportunity to do secondments. And the difference between Horizon 2020 is that you can run these secondments worldwide. So you can go anywhere in the world that you want. And the novelty since last year is that we offer the possibility to do an additional placement in an EU member state or Horizon Europe associated country for what we call the non-academic placement. It's the second time I mention it. I will show you, I think, in the next slide, the difference between a secondment and a non-academic placement. But first, the summary of the eligibility for the European Fellowship. Nationality can be any nationality. The mobility is a 12-month period over the last 36 months where you cannot exceed that duration in the host country. And your research experience will take out or will count also the maternity leave, the paternity leave, research in non-associated third country, the military service, the time spent not working in research, long-term sick leave. So all of these categories do not count in the 8 years period. And again, the doctoral degree should be obtained before the call deadline. I would like to mention the fact that please be extremely precise in your research experience, in your mobility, because we do look at every single date. It has happened, and last year, there was an application that was not eligible by 2 days because the fellow had 2 days extra in terms of mobility in the host country and therefore was not admissible. So please really pay attention to this. For global fellowship, so the nationality is slightly more restricted. You have to be either a national or a long-term resident of an EU member state or an associated country. The mobility rule is the same, and the research experience, again, is the same. So we do not count maternity leave, paternity leave, military service, time spent not working in research, and long-term sick leave. And again, the doctoral degree should be obtained before the call deadline. So I mentioned secondments and non-academic placements. We have seen last year that there was a lot of confusion between what a secondment is and non-academic placement. So if I can be very, very simple in my approach, and I apologize if I use an example from chemistry. Myself, I am the panel coordinator for the chemistry panel, so I understand more the situations here. So what would be a secondment in a proposal? A secondment in a proposal is, for example, when you want to do a specific study and the host organization that you're with doesn't have the tools to do it. So you say, okay, I'm going to go 2 months to that other laboratory in Europe or worldwide to run these experiments because I don't have that in-house. The non-academic placement is different. This is a period, and I will go really in the details thereafter, but it's a period that you decide at the end of your fellowship to spend up to 6 months in a non-academic placement. Generally for chemistry, it means going to industry, but it could be also going to a museum, going to an NGO. There's a lot of organizations that are not academic, sorry. So in terms of the exact details, what are we talking about here? For secondment, you can go and do a secondment to up to 1/3 of the requested project duration. So if you have a 24-month fellowship, you can go to do a secondment for up to 8 months. It can be multiple secondments. It's written further down. You can do 2 or 3 secondments during that period, but the total amount of time cannot exceed a third. Same for the global fellowship, whereas for the non-academic placement, it's a maximum of 6-month duration. When can you do the secondment? When can you do the non-academic placement? For a global fellowship, you can do the secondment at any time during the project duration. For a global fellowship, a maximum of 3 months can be spent at the start of the project at the beneficiary, and this period of 3 months will be considered as part of the outgoing phase. But the secondments cannot take place in the return period in the member state. For the non-academic placement, this 6 months have to be after, it's at the end of the fellowship. And you can see that the secondments, you can divide them into smaller periods, whereas the non-academic placement is 1 period at the end. In terms of mobility, where can you go with your secondment? Well, you can go anywhere worldwide for your secondment. However, for a non-academic placement, a NAP, you can only go to a member state or a Horizon Europe associated country. Sector, any sector for the secondment, non-academic placement, non-academic sector only. You have to encode this information in your proposal. I will go into details in terms of, which different parts of the proposal you have. You have a part A, you have a part B. And in the part A, you do have to say in the call-specific questions whether or not you intend to do a secondment. The same for the non-academic placement. You have to encode it. And this is very important that you make the distinction, because if you select a non-academic placement, this triggers an additional budget that is only for the non-academic placement. In the part B1, which is the core content of your proposal, you have to, of course, describe what the secondment is, where you're going to do it, what are the interests for your proposal to do this secondment. So it is important because the relevance and the quality of that secondment will be assessed by the evaluators. The same applies for the NAP. The relevance and the quality will be assessed by the evaluators. Do you have to provide any extra information for your secondment in the part B2? No, you don't. Just listing the fact, there's a table in the part B1 where you just have to list, I will do my secondment in that place, and you have to provide a number for it. However, for a NAP, you need to have a letter of commitment. What do we mean by that? It's a letter that will be added to your application where the organization in which you want to do the non-academic placement has to write, I intend to accept this person, should this person get their fellowship, to come and work for us during that period, etc., etc. All the details of what is expected in the letter of commitment is obviously available on our site, and you can find all the information there. ERA fellowships. So if some of you are interested in the fellowships, this is what we call our widening activities. This only applies if you are interested to go in a country labeled as a widening country. So there's a very long list here, which is Portugal, Croatia, Cyprus, etc. And basically, if you score above 70%, but you're not selected, you might be able to be eligible for an ERA fellowship. So you have to tick, if you, for example, select Portugal as your beneficiary, you can tick, yes, I would like to be considered for the ERA fellowship should my proposal not make it to the main list, but still score above 70%. So you also have the outermost regions in France. You also have, for Spain, the Canary Islands, and I think that's it. And it's exactly the same fellowship. So it's the same proposal. Everything is the same. The only thing is you have to tick if you're interested in participating in it. Euratom, as I said, is to aim to enhance the nuclear expertise and excellence, as well as the synergies between programs. And this year, there will be around €1 million available for those proposals linked to the Euratom program. Now, the core of the matter, the evaluation criteria. So we have 3 main evaluation criteria: excellence, impact, quality and efficiency of the implementation. And you see at the bottom that they bear different weight. The heavier weight is for the excellence. That counts for 50% of the score, 30% for the impact, and 20% for the quality and efficiency of the implementation. You have 4 sub-criteria for excellence, 3 for impact, and 2 for the quality and efficiency of the implementation. And before I describe every single one of them, I would really like to advise you that when you write your proposal, each and every single one of these sub-criteria is addressed. Why is that? It's because we use grids, we use different systems, and the evaluators are trained to look at every single one of those points. So it's really to your advantage to talk about everything. So I will go into the detail of every one of these criteria. The first one is the quality and pertinence of the project's research and innovation objectives. So really, this is the core of the science that your proposal carries. What do you intend to do? How am I going to go beyond the state of the art? Why am I going to save the world with this specific research project? Then the second one, we're going to look at the proposed methodology, the scientific methodology behind your research. So is it sound? And does it mention interdisciplinarity? Does it consider the gender dimension? And I will stop here because there was a little bit of confusion last year as to the gender dimension. We do ask you to address the gender dimension, but we do ask you to address it even if it's not applicable by saying, this is not applicable in my research. So really, we will assess those that, for example, if you're doing a study on a population and you have a gender dimension in your study, then of course you have to address the gender dimension in your proposal. But let's say an astrophysicist looking at a black hole in the constellation of Sagittarius, gender issues are not specifically relevant. And we're not talking about the setting of the host or whether or not, your gender, etc. We're really looking at the research. So in the case that you are an astrophysicist working on that topic, you only have to write down, my proposal is not concerned by gender, but you just have to address it, just saying, not relevant for me. Then we will look at the quality of the supervision, the training, and the two-way transfer of knowledge. This is extremely important to us. First of all, who are you going to work with? What does the supervisor bring? Does the supervisor have experience in fellowship? Does he not have, but is he capable of hosting an MSCA fellow? And the training and the two-way transfer of knowledge is also, I will repeat, extremely important. And to give you an idea, once you are awarded with your fellowship, and after 2 years, we do an assessment of your work. One of the main things that we look at is whether or not you have trained in what you said you're going to be trained, whether or not this two-way transfer of knowledge has worked. And what do we mean by training? It's not only scientific training. Of course, you could say, I'm going to train in this machine, I'm going to train in that skill, but I'm also going to train on how to become a better team leader. I'm going to train in communication. I'm going to train in project management. There's multiple things that the host organization can offer and that you can also decide that you want to be trained in. And what do we mean by two-way transfer of knowledge is, of course, what the host and the supervisor will give to you in terms of transfer of knowledge, but also what do you bring to the host? Quite often we see fellows that say, well, I have an experience in spectroscopy. I've used this amazing tool in my PhD, and they go to a university that doesn't know anything about this tool. Well, they bring the knowledge with them into that new organization. And this is very important to see that it's bilateral, but it's two-way. Then we will look at the quality and the appropriateness of the researcher's professional experience, competences, and skills. So I think a lot of you panic a little bit about this, especially on the topic of publications. Do I have to have 10 publications? Will I be penalized if I only have 1 publication? Where here we look at your experience holistically. Obviously, if you've just had your PhD 2 months ago, then you might not have a lot of publications compared to somebody who has a lot more experience. So we do not look at a number. We look whether this proposal is relevant, whether you have and I think there was a question on this as well, but the publications that you have written have a link to the research topic that you are going to apply to. And we look at so many other things than publication. I focus on this because I fear that this is a worry from fellow. I did a presentation on Tuesday, and a prospective fellow told me, I was told I need to have 10 publications. I have never seen that number. And they had an example of a previous fellow that was awarded a fellowship. And she said, well, you know, I studied in the UK and I only had one publication at the time of the call deadline, and I still made it. So do not worry about the number. Think about your whole background as a whole. Try to really explain why we should give you this and how it's useful for you. Now, the impact. We want to look at whether or not having this fellowship can have an impact on your career perspective and your employability. This is obviously extremely important to us. We want this fellowship to be a jumping board for your career. And quite often, I mentioned the evaluation report that we run at the end. We generally see that most fellows, once they've had their fellowship, they achieve academic position, they go to industry, they have wide career prospects ahead of them. And it's extremely important that we understand that by receiving this fellowship, you will go further, and also that you describe a bit, you know, where you want to go with this fellowship. Second sub-criteria is the suitability and the quality of the measures to maximize the expected outcome and impact as set out in the dissemination plan and including communication activity. So here you have to say, you know, what am I going to do to maximize the dissemination and the impact of everything that I do. And the final one, the magnitude and the importance of the project's contribution to expected scientific, societal, and economic impacts. Again, this last year, this created a bit of confusion because people thought, well, you know, I'm working on a very specific mechanism in an organic synthesis field. How can I have any societal impact at this stage? Whereas it's the same as gender. If you fear or if you feel that you're very far away from a societal impact because you're working on something extremely basic, just state it. At this stage, we do not aim to have any societal impact, but maybe in the long term, I intend to do this and this and this. For those of you that have research that is much closer to the market or much closer to an economic impact, please explain to us what you intend to see as an impact. And it could be scientific, societal, and economic. All of you will have anyway a scientific impact, but it's the societal one and the economic one that sometimes can be a bit difficult to describe. But really give it your best shot. And if you think, you know, don't, as I told the French people, don't do the ostrich. Don't hide your head in the sand and pretend that, oh, I don't address it, it's fine because, you know, they will understand that my proposal doesn't have any societal impact. No, address it. But don't also do a Miss World competition. I intend to save the world with my research when realistically it's not true. So, but, you know, cover everything. And then the last one is the quality and efficiency of the implementation. So the evaluators will look at the work plan, will look at the risks and the appropriateness of the efforts assigned to the work package. I would like to also remind you that risk assessment is very important. Why is that? I'll just give you a very simple example. You're writing your proposal now, we're in May 2022. You might start at the earliest in March, April 2023, and at the latest September 2024. Science moves, science advances. What if by the time you start, your field of research has already moved forward? For example, what do you intend to do if you get awarded this? So really think about the different risks associated to your proposal, both in terms of implementation, in terms of science. Think about that and describe the mitigation measures. Well, should that happen, I will do this and this and this and this. Should this happen, then this is what I will do. but it's very important for you to address this. And obviously the work plan has to be clear. You have to have a clear Gantt chart, talk about deliverable milestones, etc. And really explain to the evaluators. Quite often we see this, evaluators telling us, well, they completely underestimated the time or the effort it will take to do this study. So really think about it thoroughly. And finally, we look at the quality and the capacity of the host institution and all participating organizations, including the hosting arrangements. Is the University of Louvain going to do its utmost best to welcome you? And by welcoming you, I don't mean having a drink with you and a coffee and a cookie. Is what will they put in place for MSc, or what do they have in place for MSCA fellows to come to the organization, to have a space, to have an office, to have labs that are accessible to them, etc. So I hope I've described in detail and hopefully in simpler manner what is our evaluation and award criteria. Now, the call planning, as Nadej just mentioned, it's been open since the 12th of May. It will close on the 14th of September. The evaluation will run between October and January 2023. There's also a part of the evaluation that covers ethics, because if a proposal raises ethics concern, then we have a separate ethics evaluation. And we aim to prepare the grants in February 2023. And the project starting date, this is again an estimate, it's from March 2023 to September 2024. Now, this I already mentioned, but I just want to show you the budgets. For the European Fellowship, we have around 218 million euros, and for the Global Fellowship, 38.55 million euros, for a total of 257 million for this year. Air Fellowship, I will not repeat the rules here because you've heard them before, but there's an indicative budget of 8 million euro. And what are the novelties compared to last year? Well, they're not really novelties as such, but resubmissions. So since the call, this new format is running since last year, there are resubmissions. And what do we count as resubmission? Anybody that scored above 70% can resubmit their proposal. They will have to tick in the proposal, part A, yes, this is a resubmission. It doesn't penalize you at all to resubmit. However, the idea is that you do not resubmit exactly the same research. It's not to your interest unless you think that a new set of evaluator will assess you completely differently. But it gives you the opportunity, let's say if you received a 90% score, to think, okay, I'm going to tweak my proposal here and there. This is where I didn't score well. It gives you the opportunity to improve on your proposal. However, if you scored less than 70% last year, you're under the obligation to change either the host or the researcher, because we will not accept any proposal that has scored below 70 and has the same host organization and same researcher. Non-academic placement. If a placement does not meet the requirement, and this is not a novelty, the proposal will be evaluated without taking account the non-academic placement. And obviously, this might affect the score. We do ask you to describe the capacity of the hosting organization in one of the criteria. Well, if we have to completely disregard your non-academic placement, you might score lower in that category. So please, if you're interested in a non-academic placement, really look at all the criteria, make sure that you enter all the necessary information. And we hope that we have provided this year better guidance on how to properly encode the difference between, well, a secondment or a non-academic placement in the submission forms this year. And I hope I made it clear to you the difference between the two of them. Just a little picture of the results of last year. So, sorry. For the European Fellowship, we had around 7,039 eligible proposals and 1,025 made it in the main list. You have the success rate here of all the different panels. So with an average of 13.78, and the highest scores go to mathematics. So you see here also the proportion of proposals retained for funding. It's not an extremely high success rate, but it's pretty reasonable. For Global Fellowship, there was 808 eligible proposal and 131 made it to the main list. And again, here we have more differences. The average is 16.21% success rate, with ECO going all the way up to 22.22% success. And you can see that there was a lot of application in SOC last year for Global Fellowship. This is a huge table that you probably have difficulties to read, but it's just to show you what has been shaded in green are the proposals that made it to the main list. So you have the cutoff score for funding, just to give you an idea. So my responsibility is chemistry. So the cutoff score this year was 92.8. So if you resubmit, for example, in chemistry, if you score between 70 and 92.8, then you'll be allowed to resubmit exactly the same proposal should you want to do it. The funding threshold differs from panel to panel. I think the highest one in the EF is Life, with a funding threshold of 94.4. Generally, this happens in the larger panels such as Life and SOC, because they have the sheer volume of proposals that receive. For example, GF, Global Fellowship for ECHO, they had a very low threshold of 83.8, but they only had 9 proposals that made it to the funding threshold. The success rate per country, you can see what it is. For Belgium, we're at 13 point something, I can't really see, but you see the number of proposals that have been submitted. And I realize that you're all concerned about the UK, because we can also see it. Most of the proposal, at least, for example, in chemistry, 40% of our successful proposals should be going to a UK beneficiary. So if the UK doesn't participate last year, we will see a big difference. And I would like to remind you also now, if you intend to submit a proposal with a UK beneficiary, please think of a mitigating measure and already think about another partner should we hear that the UK is completely out. This will prevent you from, mid-June, just go, what do I do now? So think about a backup plan. In terms of the non-academic placement, to give you an idea of all the issues that there were last year, 627 proposals requested NAP. However, 50% of them were ineligible or inadmissible, and only 64 proposals, including NAPs, were funded. So the success rate was about 20%, but really this shows you that so many NAPs were wrongly encoded, were wrongly understood. Some of them were secondments. So if you're interested in doing a non-academic placement, the thorough you are in your application, the better it is for you. All calls are published on the Funding and Tenders portal, and you submit your application through the portal. Let me also stop here 1 second. I said the cutoff date is 14th of September. Please do not wait until the 14th of September to submit your proposal, because a lot of people will do the same. And this means that there can be technical bugs, and anything that we receive 1 minute later than the closing time will not be admissible. So you can write to us and say, yeah, but the internet shut down, or my cat stepped on my keyboard. We will disregard it. So really work on your proposal. You have plenty of time. We're in May, June, July, August. You have more than 3 months to work on your proposal, and do not wait for the last moment, because every year there are some issues. As I mentioned before, there's 2 parts to your proposal: the part A, the structured data, and the part B, the description of the action. Part A is something that you fill in automatically, and part B has a 10-page limit, and this is really the description of the action. Part A, there's a submission wizard, and we are preparing right now a guide to help you on how to complete part A, and it will be available shortly. You will have to enter lots of information: the researcher information, beneficiary information, budget information, secondment, NAP, etc. But we understand that this 8-year rule can be tricky. So in the system, you will find a document and a self-assessment tool to help you calculate the possible deduction to your 8 years FTE experience in research. So there should be an Excel table, and you can say, okay, well, these are my dates of research, but I took X month as maternity leave, I took Y month for military service. So we offer this tool for you to help you calculate this information. Part A, there's also, REA fellowships, secondment, NAPS, and the keywords. So you have to select 2 keywords, mandatory and associate to a scientific panel. There's a 3rd keyword that is mandatory, and it can be of any panel, and you can add a 4th and 5th keyword should you want. I really advise you to be extremely precise with your keywords, because the more precise your keyword is, the best we can allocate the most relevant evaluator for this proposal. And the resubmission question will appear in the form, and you will just have to tick yes. On the resubmission, I would like to also mention that we only consider proposals from last year and not proposals that were submitted in H2020. Part B, this is where you describe your work. It's restricted to 10-page. Cover pages, table of contents will count towards your page limit. And any text that goes beyond, that goes beyond 10 pages will be cut off by us. I also advise you not to play with the font, not to play with the margins. There are rules in terms of fonts and margins you can use, because we see it. Every year we get evaluators tell us, I can't read the proposal, it's written so small, and we realize that people use for the main body of text a font 6 in order to squeeze in more information. What do? We change the format, and then we cut off all the information that goes beyond 10 pages. And the part B1 should start with 1, excellence. Part B2, there's no page restriction. This is where you put the researcher's CV, so don't worry if you have a 10-page CV, where you list the participating organization, where you add the letter of commitment, the host for the outgoing phase of the GF or the non-academic placement, and ethics and security information. There are loads of resources and guidances available for you. The guide for applicants is already out. You have our work program. You have the tool that helps you calculate the 8 years research experience. Under preparation, you have the guide to how to complete the part A. You can find proposal templates, model grant agreements, manuals on how to submit application. You can also look at frequently asked questions, guidelines on supervision, the green charter. You have your NCPs here available. You can submit specific queries to the research inquiry service. And since you will receive the slides, you also have lots of hyperlinks here that you can click onto and access to more information. But really, we hope that we've provided you with enough information. I hope this presentation was useful. I will answer some of the questions now, I think, because I've received some questions in advance. But I hope this was useful, and I look forward to answering your question. Thank you very much.